Percy felt his sword in his pocket again, but he knew he couldn't survive fighting Atlas. Then he remembered part of the prophecy, the Titan's curse one must withstand. Maybe a half-blood couldn't go against him, but a god could. Or a goddess. "Let me take the sky, my lady," he told Artemiss. "No, boy," she said. "You don't know what you're asking for. Annabeth only survived long enough because she had the true spirit of a huntress. You will not last long." "I'm gonna die anyway," Percy said. He didn't wait for her reply. He got on his knees and went shoulder to shoulder with Artemiss. For a moment, they held it up together. It was the heaviest thing Percy ever felt. Then Artemiss slipped out from under the burden, and Percy held it alone. He wanted to black out, but he breathed deeply. He thought about how Bianca had given up her life so they could make it this far. If she could do that, he could hold up the sky just as well. His vision seemed a bit fuzzy as he watched Artemiss fight against Atlas. Zoe shot arrows at her father, but it didn't help much. Atlas slowly pursued Artemiss while she backed up toward Percy. "Get ready," she said in his mind. At that moment, Percy realized what she was planning. But when she wasn't looking, Atlas swung his javelin under her feet, and she was on the ground. He raised up his javelin, and then... "No!" Zoe yelled. She shot an arrow right through his head. Still alive, the Titan swatted Zoe into a wall. She didn't get up. She didn't even move. Then he pointed the tip of his javelin back at Artemiss. She seemed paralyzed, because she didn't even try to get up. "The first blood of a new war at last," Atlas said. He got ready to launch down his javelin, and then... Artemiss grabbed the javelin and pulled it like a lever, setting the Titan off his feet and in Percy's direction. Percy let himself get pushed out of the way, and the Titan was trapped. "No, not again," he complained. Percy felt so relieved to be out of there, but at the same time, his body felt like it was burning up. Thalia was still fighting Luke, and she slammed him right through a wall. She managed to slap his sword right out of his hand with her spear. She started to get tears in her eyes as she kept the spear pointing at him, and for a moment, there was silence. "Well," he said. Annabeth finally broke free of her bonds and ran up to them. "No, Thalia," she shouted. "Don't kill him." "He's a traitor," Thalia sobbed. "A traitor." "No, we can just take him back to Olympus," Annabeth said. He can be useful." "Is that what you want, Thalia?" Luke asked. "To go back there and please your father?" Thalia hesitated. Then Luke grabbed for her spear. Then, without thinking, she kicked him, making him lose his balance and fell over the edge. "Luke!" Annabeth yelled. The kids looked over the edge and saw below the army of the Princess Andromeda stopped in amazement and stared at Luke's broken form on the ground. Thalia just stood there with tears running down her cheeks. As much as Percy hated Luke, he couldn't stand all of this. He wanted to believe he was alive, but that had to be impossible. It was 50 feet below, and he wasn't moving. Then they looked back at Artemiss, with Zoe laying in her arms. She was breathing, and her eyes were open, but still. "The hit she took from Atlas has made her poison wound worse," Artemiss said. "Quick, anybody have ambrosia or nectar?" Percy asked. Nobody moved. Grief hung in the air. Luke's army was already literally on the doorstep to the fortress. Then, a strange buzzing noise hung in the air. A Sopwith camel flew down from the sky, and its machine guns burst to life, peppering the ground with bullets, which were somehow able to hit the monsters. "Now's our chance," Artemiss said. She pulled out her hunting horn, pressed it to her lips, and the sound echoed throughout the fortress. Zoe's eyes were fluttering. "It's okay, Zoe," Percy said to her. "It's gonna be okay." Just then, something flew down from the moon and landed in front of them with glowing moonlight. A white chariot pulled by the most beautiful deer they had ever seen. They hopped in and flew into the air. "Please tell me this is not what inspired Santa Claus," Percy said. "Indeed, young half-blood," Artemiss answered. They flew away to Crissy Field with the biplane right behind them. When they landed, they got a better look at the pilot as soon as he climbed out of the plane and took off his helmet. It was Annabeth's dad. She couldn't recall feeling so happy to see anyone in her life. "Dad," she said, "you fought the monsters. You saved us. You were amazing." "Well, not bad for a middle-aged mortal, I suppose," he said, blushing. "But where did you get celestial bronze?" she asked. "Well, you left plenty in your old room back in Virginia," he said, "back when you left." Annabeth looked embarrassed for a second. She could tell that her dad was being real careful not to say "ran away." "It was just a little experiment, really," he said. Percy could see now why Athena took a liking in him. "Annabeth," Thalia interrupted. Her voice sounded urgent. Artemiss had Zoe laying at her side. They had no ambrosia or nectar. They had no mortal medicine, if that could even help at all, and Zoe did not look good at all. "Can't you heal her with magic?" Percy asked Artemiss. "Life is a fragile thing," she answered. "If the fates decide to cut a string, there is little I can do, but I can try." Zoe gripped Artemiss's hand. "Have I served thee well?" Zoe asked, sounding weak. "With great honor, brave one," Artemiss said. "The finest of my attendants. Rest now, and I shall try to heal the poison." But Percy knew at that moment it wasn't just the poison that was killing her. It was her father's final blow. That's what the prophecy meant when it said, "One shall perish by a parent's hand." Zoe must have known all along, and yet she still took the quest. That terrible strike from her father made the poison even worse. She locked eyes with Thalia. "I'm sorry. We argued," she said. "We could have been sisters." "It's all my fault," Thalia said, blinking hard. "You were right about Luke. Heroes, men, everything." "No," Zoe said. "Not all men." She gave Percy a weak smile and asked, "Do you still have the sword?" He pulled out the pen where she could see it. "You spoke the truth, Percy Jackson," she said. "You are nothing like Hercules, and I am honored that you carry an eklusmos." Then she looked up at the stars. "The stars," she whispered. "I can see them again, my lady." A tear trickled down Artemiss's cheek. "Yes, brave one," she said. "They are beautiful tonight." "Stars," Zoe repeated. Her eyes fixed on the glittering night sky, and Zoe did not move again. Then they all watched as Artemiss cupped Zoe's mouth and whispered a few words in ancient Greek. Then a wisp of smoke floated from Zoe's lips and into the goddess's hand, and Zoe's body disappeared. Still holding up the ball of smoke, Artemiss stood up, whispered a kind blessing in her hands, and threw the smoke high into the air, and it vanished. Then they saw something glowing in the sky that they never noticed before. An all-new constellation of a girl running with a bow. The Zoe Nightshade constellation. Let the world forever honor you, my dear huntress, Artemis said. Live forever in the stars and in our hearts. And now I must immediately return to Olympus, she told the others. I cannot escort you there myself, but I will send you help. She laid a hand on Annabeth's shoulder and said, You are brave beyond measure, my dear girl, and I know you will do what is right. Then she stared a long time at Thalia. Thalia almost couldn't convince herself to make eye contact. It must have been seriously complicated for her, considering the fact that this goddess was really her half-sister. And that young appearance must have made it even weirder since she was like 3,000 years older. But then Artemis' expression softened. Then she looked over at Percy. You did well, Percy Jackson, she said, for a man. He realized that was the first time she hadn't called him boy, and that made him smile. Then she stepped back into her chariot and flew into the sky, and the moon goddess was gone. Well, she was quite impressive, Dr. Chase said, though I still prefer Athena. Dad, Annabeth said, sounding embarrassed. What? He said, sounding lost. Oh, nothing, she said. Listen, I'm sorry that I... Shh. No need to apologize, sweetie, he said, pulling her into a hug. I know it's not easy, but I know now you must do what you must. Hiya, boss! A voice shouted in Percy's head. Blackjack! Percy shouted excitingly. Check it out, said Blackjack. I brought my friends Guido and Pork Pie to help. Then he looked over at the others. Any of these guys you need us to trample, boss? No, these are my friends, Percy said. We need to get back to Olympus fast before the solstice is over. Oh, but we can't take him, boss, said Blackjack, looking towards Dr. Chase. The big man won't allow any mortals on Olympus. My gods, they're beautiful, Dr. Chase said, stunned by the Pegasi. Don't worry, he's not coming with us, Percy told Blackjack. Annabeth, Dr. Chase said. I know San Francisco is a dangerous place for you, but please, just remember, you'll always have a home here with us. We'll keep you safe. And I love you. More than anything. She didn't answer, but her eyes were flooding with tears as she turned away. He waved goodbye as they took off and headed back to New York. As they zoomed through the sky, Thalia fell asleep, and Percy made conversation with Annabeth. Your dad seems a lot cooler since you last saw him, Percy told her. I guess so, she said, but he's still in California, and I can't live so far from camp. So what will you do now? Percy asked. I don't know, said Annabeth, but thanks for saving me. Oh, it was nothing. That's what friends are for, Percy said. So you never really believed I was dead? She asked. Never, Percy assured her. Neither's Luke, you know, Annabeth said. I mean, he isn't dead. That was a pretty bad fall, Percy said. I don't see how. I know he isn't dead. I just know the same way you knew about me, she insisted. No doubt we'll see him again, Percy. Percy had no idea how to compare those two different beliefs, at all. Then Percy saw something up ahead he couldn't expect in a matter of minutes. New York City! How's that for speedy? Blackjack bragged. You're the man, Blackjack, Percy said, or the horse, or whatever.